Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CanSim webinar series. My name is Leslie Graham, and I'm facilitating the webinar series and today's presentation. Again, we're just excited to be able to network with all of our colleagues across the country, and around the world, let's say. So thank you for joining us. And it is my absolute pleasure to be introducing our speaker this afternoon, Barb Gough. She is the director of the Center for Caring with Technology at Notre University in Baltimore. Her presentation today is entitled Cultivating Caring into the Simulation. And again, a very warm welcome, Barb. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And I'm going to hand everything over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for your interest and tuning in. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to expect over the next hour, and we'll take it from there. We're going to start off with a reflection, and I like to have a centering reflection. And then we're going to, I'll tell you a little bit about my story, how I ended up here. We'll look at our objectives. We'll have some time getting to know what caring science is, what you think caring science is, and we'll talk about some theorists, and then I will share with you what we're doing here at Notre Maryland University. So does that sound good? Okay. All right. So we're going to start off with the center and reflection, which is, Gene Watson. So sit back, relax a little bit. You might even want to close your eyes and just have a listen. There's more to that reflection. It's about 7 minutes long, and you can go on the Gene Watson Caring Institute website if you'd like to hear the rest of that. I find that to be very calming. So that's something I like to do, start off with a centering reflection to get everybody on the same page. And I just wanted to speak with you just a minute about how I came to know caring science. I never planned on being a nurse. That wasn't in my radar. And I guess the age of 17, I started working in a nursing home because my grandma, who used to live with us, was we had to place her in a nursing home. We called them a nursing home back then. So I wanted to keep an eye on her, and I just, I needed a summer job. It was the summer after high school. And I just cried. I just cried for 2 weeks. This is so sad. I can't do this. How do people do this? And, I found out that I was pretty innocent. And I found out that I had to, bathe people and, bathe men. And, I just thought there was a little angel that was going to come down and do that work. And then, of course, I realized that I was that angel. And that's a story I like to tell my students. And that's when I learned I was being called to care. And so I went to nursing school that summer out of high school, and I assumed everyone that chose this profession, they were able to see all people as a caring person, but I learned that's not entirely true. And so I began my career in med-surg, critical care, and I was often the nurse that was chosen to take care of those difficult patients, because I always had that ability to actively listen and honor the whole patient. I still believe that anyone who entered the profession was able to display caring behaviors and show loving kindness. And still I was finding that was not always the case. And so later in my career, 20 years in, I thought that caring was being lost in nursing, and it was being overshadowed by technology. And it wasn't until recently, the last couple of years, that I've come to know that technology is an expression of caring. So over the past several years after grad school, I've spent my time trying to live caring and grow in my understanding of caring science. And when I look back on my 30+ years of nursing, I can see that coming to know caring science was my calling. And I've learned that our caring way of being with patients and students is what separates us from other disciplines. And I would like to thank Dr. Mary Packard for inspiring me to apply myself to become a caring scholar. Simulation is a wonderful modality, and I think it was built for caring science. And I believe there's a space for caring science and creating a culture of caring and simulation. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Okay. Yeah. So here are some very simple objectives. We're going to have a look at our self-knowledge of caring science, and we're going to verbalize an understanding of caring science and discuss strategies to cultivate a culture of caring into simulation. So I'm going to call on you, and whatever you feel comfortable doing, you can raise your hand, you can go in the chat box, you can go ahead and talk, whatever you feel comfortable with. So I'd like to propose the first question. What would you consider to be caring behaviors from the nurse? Anybody?
Barb, we're having a few in the chat features. So one, being present in the moment.
Being present in the moment. So someone that is authentically present, not just in the room, but sharing that moment with the patient, being authentically present. What are some other ways that we show caring? Maybe compassionate, competent, confident care. So what does that mean? When someone's compassionate, it's nice for us to say that, but what kinds of things are compassionate? Behaviors that encompass the whole person and their perspectives and priorities. So when we say a nurse is compassionate, I like to break it down a little more. Mutual understanding. Okay, so respect, showing respect, calling them by their name, their last name, not just assuming Rosalinda Melendez wants to be called Rosalinda. Let's assume that she wants to be called, and show respect by calling her by her last name, unless she tells you different. No judgment, yes. Being accepting, being informative, I think is so very important. Letting the patient know what you're going to do, even if that patient is not able to talk, or maybe they're comatose. I think it's still so important. Mr. Smith, I'm going to go ahead and get you cleaned up. I'm going to turn you to your side. I'm going to put some lotion on your back. We're going to get you all clean, verbalizing what you're going to do, being informative. Another caring behavior is attention to detail. So it could be knowing that patient's lab results, having them ready for them. Maybe it's something simple as a patient asks for a tall glass of ginger ale with lots of ice and a straw, and either you go get it or your assistant goes to get it and comes back with a nice tall cup of ginger ale with a lot of ice and a straw. They're going to look at you like you're the best thing. What I've learned is patients don't usually say things like, wow, she really put in that NG tube really well. She really inserted that catheter so efficiently. Usually they say things like, boy, was she kind. She really sat and listened to me. And they may not remember your name, but they're going to remember how you made them feel and what you did for them. So all of those things are examples of caring behavior. Certainly, touch if it's appropriate, and certainly actively listening. And I would always challenge my students, especially when they only had 2 or 3 students, go in there and sit on that patient's bed and ask them what is important to them and listen to what's important to them. So these are the kinds of things, that are considered to be caring behaviors. So then, how would you describe caring science? Anybody familiar with that term or use that term? So I'm guessing maybe that's a term that maybe you're not quite sure how to articulate. And someone wrote, caring science allows for the provision of space to provide caring, how we can care in spite of. I like that. I like that. That's a nice way of putting it. Holistic care. Very good. I like that. So Notre Dame of Maryland is an institution that tries to ground our curriculum in caring science. And so faculty got together and tried to come up with a, I guess we call it a caring statement. And this is what we've come up with. Just trying to get the slide. There we go. So this is our caring statement. Human caring science is the study of caring as the grounding inspiration of the discipline of nursing. Within a caring model, the way of being together in authentic relationships enacts respect for person, loving kindness, empathetic presence with the intention to care that honors and values each person. Care in science requires full attention to what matters most to persons about their health. Caring science calls for courage, calls for humility, technological competence, and multiple ways of knowing in order to create a more humane, just, and compassionate world. Sorry for the typo. So a compassionate world, that should say. And that was Dr. Packard headed this little task force. I'm not sure she's here today, but again, call out to Dr. Packard. All righty. So now we're going to talk a little bit about different caring science theorists that I've come to know. Still learning quite a bit, but so I think most people have heard of Jean Watson. Has anybody heard of Jean Watson? You can just put in the chat, yes, no, yes. Okay, several yeses. Yeah, generally that's the feedback I do receive, that yes, we have heard of her. And her hope is that her theory would help distinguish nursing science as a separate and important entity from medical science. Different theories, right? And one thing that really sets with me is maybe this one moment with this one person is the very reason we're here on earth at this time. You know, it might be just one caring moment in time. And of course, I love that caring is the essence of nursing. Okay, that's just something that she has said. Some of her core concepts and principles: she believes in transpersonal caring relationships, practicing loving kindness, authentic presence, being with instead of doing to. And of course, that's often what we're pulled in to do, are those tasks. Check it off our list and get those tasks done. And I've often wondered if there was a little checkbox for, did you spend 10 minutes with that patient during your shift and just talk about what they want to talk about? I think if we put it on that checkoff list, it might happen. So being with that patient, being with that student. It's a relational caring for self and others. Again, that caring occasion, that caring moment, multiple ways of knowing. And she also believes in a reflective meditative approach. So we do try to do a reflective approach in our debriefs. And then, of course, we have Ann Boykin and Savina Schoenhofer. They believe in the dance of caring persons. They're both nurses, Boykin and Schoenhofer, lots of publications. And they believe in creating a culture where each person is respected, valued, and celebrated. And some of their major assumptions underlying the theory of nursing is caring. They believe the persons are caring by the virtue of their humanness, and persons are caring moment to moment. Persons are whole or complete in the moment. And they believe in living the process grounded in caring. Nursing is both a discipline and a profession. And we enhance our personhood through participating in nurturing relationships for caring with others. Another theorist, Milton Meyerhoff, he's a philosopher, he's not a nurse, but I often like to use his ingredients of caring, knowing, alternating rhythms, patience, honesty, trust, humility, and hope. And he has stated that love is the selfless promotion of the growth of the other. I love that. So he speaks about knowing. In order to care, I must understand the needs of the other, hear their stories, get to know what's important to them instead of what's important to us. Listen to our students, listen to our patients. Alternating rhythms, whether you're in the classroom or maybe you are, at the bedside. If you're unsuccessful, try again in another way. Patience, of course, being patient is so important. Honesty, we need to be honest with our patients, be honest with our students. We need to work on building trust with our patients. One of the very first things we really need to do to establish that caring relationship is to build trust. Humility and hope, learning from the one that's cared for and hope that the other will grow as well through caring. So it's a mutual exchange of care. Then we have Sister Simone Roach. She's also a nurse, and I like her 6 C's. There is a need to care for others, is what's called us into profession. Most of us, at least in my generation, the main reason we went into nursing is because we cared. And it's what sustained us through the joys, the conflicts, and the challenges that we experienced. Okay, and it's not just technology that saves patients, but also the caring you show to patients. And I'll tell my students, it's just important to listen than it is to give the Tylenol, So the 6 C's that she speaks about and has written about: compassion, conscious, commitment, competence, confidence, and comportment. So when we speak about comportment, we're talking about our demeanor, how we present ourselves when we enter the room or we enter the classroom. We might be having a very bad day. There could be something going on in our life or something going on in the other class or with the student or with another patient, but it's real important for us to maintain our calm and caring, demeanor, our comportment. So I like to use her as well in debriefing. Loxon, he's a nurse, and he writes and speaks about technological competency as caring. And again, I never thought of technology as caring, but the more I've read about his philosophies, I've come to know that it is. It's a way to express our caring. Technological competence, it's a proficiency in devices, machines, instruments, tools, and it manifests itself as being caring. He believes that technology enhances the nurse's ability to fully know the person, and the nurse's challenge to be technologically proficient while responding authentically to calls for nursing. So if you haven't heard of him, especially if you're working in simulation, I think you may want to read some of his work. Any questions on any of that so far before I start talking about strategies? Okay. So I've been passionate about caring science, cultivating caring into curriculum, and as you know, as faculty, and then becoming the director, I just felt like there was a way that we could focus a little bit more on caring in simulation. So we have utilized NLN's Jeffrey's simulation theory and the Anaxel standards, and we're continuing to work on best practice. Some of the things that we've been doing are, educating faculty and staff about strategies, how to cultivate caring science, because there are, the newer faculty that maybe they weren't introduced to caring science and they're not sure about it. They're not, they don't understand the theorists, and they just need to spend more time. So we've worked on educating some of the faculty and staff. For students, for simulation, they have a pre-sim ticket to simulation. So sometimes we might have an article. For example, there's one simulation where the patient codes. We have another simulation where the patient becomes an organ donor. So how to deal with those moments in a caring manner. So we may give them some articles and some reflective questions to answer prior to coming in for the simulation. So then they come in to the simulation, and of course we do a pre-brief, and we've really beefed up our pre-brief. It used to be, what happens in sim stays in sim, that kind of thing. That certainly is very important, but we also, at each and every time we read this basic assumption, we believe that everyone participating is intelligent, capable, cares about what they're doing, wants to do their best, and wants to improve. And we say to them that we're on their side. We want them to be respectful. We actually sit in a circle during pre-brief. Keep in mind, this is a small liberal arts college, so our numbers are smaller, but we try to sit in a circle, and that's our safe space. We call that our safe space for learning. And then it's a space that is respectful and uses mistakes as a learning tool instead of making the student feel less than because they make a mistake. So we want to come at our students with the idea that we're having power with instead of power over them. We want them to be successful. When we go back in the control room, we're rooting for them. We've also worked on our objectives and trying to, insert the caring language. And that, again, that is a work in progress. So again, in the simulation room, as part of pre-brief, students are encouraged to suspend their disbelief and to show respect to one another, to show respect to faculty and staff, and show respect to the mannequins. We want the students talking to the mannequins as though they are people. And of course, they giggle and laugh in the beginning, but eventually they start talking to those mannequins instead of talking at them. So they're encouraged to suspend their disbelief, and certainly we use SPs, standardized patients, and that certainly helps. And we increase our fidelity with high quality mannequins, trained actors, realistic props. Something simple is maybe one of us or an SP will play a chaplain in the end of life and maybe wearing a cross, or, maybe if they're playing the part of a daughter, make sure they have like a different, a sweater on. And we try to use our faculty as much as possible. Sometimes we have to draw on our students. Another strategy, simulations are written to allow for caring connections to be made. For example, one of our codes, he decompensate and he codes, and that's very upsetting for the student. And so we talk about, obviously what happened, but what could have happened. He could have died, and then what was your feeling there? And let's take a moment and a moment of silence to think about John Bristow. And we actually take a moment of silence and think about this patient, John Bristow, and especially if he didn't make that particular code, if the code wasn't successful, the connections that are made with the family and the nursing staff, connections made, one nurse to another nurse. So this particular simulation opens up a lot of opportunity to talk about caring science and making caring connections and also self-care. So when we go into debriefing, we use the PEARLS method, and that's, promoting excellence and reflective learning and simulation. So again, we create that space within a caring circle. So they have their simulation. So they have their pre-briefing room, then they go in their simulation, and then they go back to the room that they were in before the simulation. So we call that our debriefing room. Pre-brief and debrief, same room. But what's important is that they're in a different room. So we create that space, listening with intention. So it's not about what myself as a facilitator or the faculty content expert wants to get accomplished. We want to hear where the students are, and we want to hear about, what they learned. And again, authentic presence, critical dialogue, collaborative relationships are developed within that debriefing space. And then there's opportunity for reflection of self and patient. And we have opportunities to talk about what matters most to patient and family. So we have some guiding questions that we like to use. I think that's on the next slide. Yeah. So, certainly we start off with reactions, and we go through, we set the scene, we get reactions. So when we set the scene, we always tell the students, we're going to take about, if the sim's 20 minutes, we'll take about 40 minutes to debrief. And we're going to make sure the objectives were met. And our goal is to improve how we work together and care for our patients. And we get their reactions and find out how they feel. Okay. Sometimes the observer is just as anxious as the participant. We'll analyze the simulation, and we'll take some observations from students. And then we usually end it with caring science. And so we'll ask questions like, were any interventions grounded in caring? And, so we'll talk about what the nurses did to display caring. Were there any caring connections made? Any caring relationships made? Did the student demonstrate acts of being with and caring for patient? If one of the sims, the mock code, there's about 5 students involved, and one's at the cart, one's doing CPR, one's at the head doing the airway. And then, is there anyone with the patient or with the family? Even though that patient is, being worked on, should we still be talking to him? We may be saying to him, we're doing everything we can here, Mr. Smith. Hang in there with us. The students sometimes forget about that part. Certainly if a family member is upset or a patient is upset, what did the student do? What did the nurse do that demonstrated caring for patient? And how did the student respond to call for nursing? Did they respond? Did they respond appropriately? Um, so this is what I spoke about. The facilitator will guide the students into a discussion. Now, of course, it depends on how much time you have. We try to allow time to talk about this. Sometimes we might only have time to talk about caring behaviors, and what was their attention to detail? Did they explain the use of technology? Were they sensitive? Were they focused on patient? Were they empathetic? And sometimes that's the farthest we get. But if time allows, we'll talk about, 2 or more of these concepts. How did the nurse begin to build trust? So you're not going to say to the patient, I'll be back in 15 minutes, because we know that's not realistic. You might say something like, I'll be back around to check on you in a little bit. Put your call light on if you need me before then. So again, authentic presence, that word keeps coming back. And some of these more difficult sims, end of life sim or mock code sim, postpartum hemorrhage. How did you care for yourself? So we take a few moments to talk about how the student cares for themselves, and we try to instill in them how important that is now when you're a student, because you're going to need that when you get into practice. So we also take time for that. So then if there's more time, we might get in a little deeper, and we'll start talking about, we'll pick one of the theories, certainly not all of them, but maybe we'll talk about major ingredients of caring. So, so then we'll bring those theorists into the conversation, and through that, the student is learning. Roach's 6 C's, technological competence is caring, all of those theorists. So again, one of the following. We can't certainly cover all of that. Okay. After we do the simulation, we talk about caring science, there might be time to do a concept map. It depends on what the faculty wants. And then after that, we circle back around and we do takeaways, and we find out, what will you take into practice? And often it isn't, oh, I'll make sure I do my 3 checks. Or it's usually something like, I realized how important it is to be authentically present. I've realized how important it is to talk to my patients even though they can't hear me. So that just warmed my heart when I hear those kind of things, that they're getting it, because I believe they will learn the skills. They just need to practice. But it's, learning the skills and being efficient, being quick, and being caring all at the same time is invaluable. We have a couple of resources up here. Ann Boykin Institute is a wonderful resource if you're interested in caring science, as well as the Watson Caring Science Institute. The other thing we do after takeaways is we just instituted our the SET-M, which asks all the important questions about simulation. Did you learn, and did you improve, etc. But we've also added on, were any caring connections made? And we recently just did an IPE sim with our sister university, Loyola. It was speech language pathology. It was our nursing students and their psychology and SLP. And that was one of the questions we asked at the end of the SET-M, which, it's an evaluation tool for simulation. And we got a lot of good feedback. So that was nice to see. That was nice to hear about. And then after the sim, after we let them evaluate, then we sit and talk about the faculty and the staff that were involved in the simulation. We'll sit and talk about what went well. Is there anything that we can improve? And we're starting to institute the DASH form. which helps us to improve as a facilitator. Okay, so I finished early. I'm certainly open for questions.
Thank you so much, Barb. And I'm going to open up the floor to the participants today. Any questions about any of the integrating caring into the simulations? And I'm not sure if I don't see anybody's hand up, but just jump in. Oh, Jocelyn, sorry. Yes, please go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Nelms, and I just had a quick question. I found it interesting that you did an interprofessional sim with speech language pathology. And then how did you support caring and nursing versus that caring in the other disciplines?
I think really through role modeling. The students, it was a communication sim. So pretty much the SLPs were teaching the nursing students and the psychology students. And then the psychology students were interviewing a patient. So nursing and SLP got to see how their way of being was with the patient. And then nursing students demonstrated how to give medication through an NG tube, and they demonstrated swipe and slow. And I think through conversations and through observing one another, caring connections were made. And those kinds of things came up in the evaluation that we distributed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
A lot of nice comments. You know, we didn't realize nurses did all that, and it was so nice to see how caring nurses are. And you know, certainly psychology, the same thing, but it was a good experience. So you
Barb,
think you're gonna go ahead?
Did you meet any resistance in integrating caring into the sim lab?
Absolutely. I'm still meeting resistance. You know, we don't have time for that. We need to concentrate on this. So that's why I say cultivating, because you've got to plant that seed, you know, and you've got to nurture it and water it, you know, for it to grow and blossom. And so just keep sort of nudging, you know. But I think what's good about NDMU is that we are an institution that is grounded in caring science, and our objectives and our curriculum, you know, uses that caring science language. And our students, you know, take a foundations of caring science course. And so all of that plays into it. But yeah, the resistance is there. And, you know, you think about the bedside nurses, you know, they feel like they don't have time to care. And I know for me, one of the reasons I was a critical care nurse for many years. And one of the reasons I left was I felt like I couldn't give the kind of care I wanted to give. And so there's got to be a way that we can, you know, we can get it in there. So that's why I use the word cultivate.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry. It's interesting. I'm Canadian, so I know all the Canadian people, but I'm working in the US right now. And it's interesting when you say your faculty says we don't have time, because whoever I know, I think a couple other people I recognize are American based, is how important things like the HCAP survey is. We do them in our hospital, which is a patient satisfaction survey, which in a nutshell, the results of it determine how our hospital is funded by Medicare and Medicaid. The survey, the HCAP survey, I'm going to say it's approximately 34 questions given to patients. 29 of them have to do with communication and how the patient felt they were treated by the staff. It doesn't ask did you get to the cath lab from the ED in record time? It doesn't ask, was anything left in you in surgery, or did you get, you know? So it's interesting, you're saying your faculty don't have, but when the students, the hospitals, so now I do, and I mean, I'm willing to share with anyone, empathetic communication and kindness training with our new hires, because you have to get those scores up. You know what I'm saying? So this is a really big part of what's happening. And then what you talked about too is I try to get them, you know, cognitive load theory when you're so overwhelmed when you're starting out and doing the task. So, you know, getting to that and sort of scaffolding, and it can be difficult when you're first starting out to maintain the kindness and the central line dressing until you get that mastery of it. But it's just
That's
really
exactly right.
Yeah, I'm just finding it's so interesting though, because you know, you need to get, this is what people rate us. I'm not getting in a whole debate on the two different healthcare systems here. I'm just saying our hospital stays open based on the results of these surveys we get back from patients.
And you said
know?
29 of the questions?
I'm just giving an approximation. Like I'm always forget what the number is. It's like, but
a lot.
over 2/3 of the questions on the HCAP survey have, or well over half, coming to 2/3, have to do with, did you feel listened to? Did you feel respected? Did you understand what they were saying? And I think there's a couple questions on the condition of the hospital and was it too noisy, like something like that. But by and large, it's how people feel they're being treated. So this is,
it isn't, you know, oh, she put in a really good IV.
yeah,
you know.
no, they mention like how they felt, and they will go here. I mean, we have episodes, I mean, they'll write reviews on Google or different things we've seen, or I mean, we have a famous story in our hospital with a patient who was really disgruntled. When this was before we had, you needed your name tag to scan to get into the administrative hallway. A few years ago that was open, and a patient actually went down there and demanded to speak to our CEO because he didn't feel he'd been respected during his stay. So it's
well, I'm glad that, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Now I just want to backtrack a little bit and say our faculty try very hard to integrate, but there are challenges. There definitely are challenges. They do believe in it, but sometimes when it gets down to reality, you know, it's challenging. I do want to answer this question that someone asked about caring in community health nursing. The biggest thing I can say about that is we teach our students to, you know, meet those patients where they are, meet those clients where they are. Don't go into, you know, their home or wherever that community health nurse is going, a clinic, with what you're going to teach them. You know, find out what matters most to them. Tell me what you want to learn more about. Okay. One of the, I always go back to this example. I took a group of students because I ended up going into community health. I left hospital nursing and went into community health. But anyway, I took a group of students into a sort of like a long-term care facility, but they were all sisters, right? They were all nuns. And what I've come to know about sisters is they're very, very intelligent, multiple degrees, traveled the world, right? So we go in with these preconceived ideas that these sisters, they're going to want to learn about aging gracefully, or, you know, how not to fall, and how to decrease the potential for dementia, right? So that's what we're going in with, assuming. But when we went in there and found out what they wanted to learn about, it was nothing I had even heard of. They wanted to learn about laughter yoga for stress reduction. And, you know, these ladies were in their 70s and 80s. And, you know, so the students came back to me and said, you know, Professor Gough, they want to learn about laughter yoga, and we don't know what that is. I said, well, you better find out. And so they had to do research, and they got a laughter yoga specialist to go in. And so find out what they want to learn about, not what you want to teach them. And meet them where they are. If they say, you know, I used to work with women that were living in poverty in Baltimore City, and they they were learning to be nursing assistants, and I worked with them, and we would talk about nutrition and how to eat healthy, and I have them write down what they ate for breakfast, and a lot of times it was McDonald's or chicken boxes or this or that. So I couldn't go in there and say, well, you need to be eating more fruits and you need to be eating more vegetables. I had to go in there and say, so tell me what's around your neighborhood. What is near you? And maybe if it is only McDonald's, let's look at what we can do to eat healthier. I know they have a chicken wrap, they have salads, maybe get the small soda instead of the big soda. So I could talk on and on about that. So hopefully that was helpful to you, whoever asked that question. Be invited to sit down. Just don't go in and assume, you can't just go in and take over. It's their home, it's their community. Was that helpful? Whoever asked that question, was that helpful?
Well, I'm not sure if the person found it that was asked it, but certainly we all did find it very helpful. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Barb? Just give everyone a moment, and Barb, I don't have your contact information. I will put your contact information, if that's okay with you. I'll put your contact information when we archive this, so that if people have further questions, they can reach out to you directly.
Absolutely, I would love that.
Perfect. So on behalf of our co-presidents, Dr. Jane Tyerman and Dr. Marion Lecter-Flood, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon and sharing your expertise in caring science and simulation. We learned a lot about it. And for me, especially, I thought just those little ways that you've integrated it was amazing. Even acknowledging when we have a patient that dies, and that's always very controversial in sim, about does the patient die, but just having that moment to acknowledge them. I think that's such a great way, and what a great example for our students. So thank you so much for that. And I just want to thank our people that are supporting us in the technological aspects of things. So I'd like to put a shout out to Zane up at Your Way in Baltimore. So thank you so much, Zane. And a big thank you to Laura Gillum for recording this for us. Thank you, Laura. And thank you everyone that's on the call today for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and please keep tuned for our next webinars. Thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.